All right, so it's a week delayed, but we're here to talk the USFL Championship and basically the recent news for the XFL. But before we get into that, we've got a very special guest tonight that I wanted to introduce or let him introduce himself. So we'll go ahead and go to the end zone here right below me, and then he can give you a quick rundown on who he is and why we invited him here tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me on, y'all. Very
Yep.
exciting. I'm also a Stallions fan, so working for the USFL, it was fun to see the Stallions win, even though I played no part, I promise. Um, the experience to work for the USFL was too good to pass up. So unfortunately, I had to take a long break from YouTube. I think it was about 10 months, and I got to work in the communications department, doing a little marketing communications. I got to meet players, coaches. It was really a dream come true. So very fun. But now I'm back, and I also have a lacrosse channel. So I've got two channels running right now on YouTube, and it's been very fun just to be back on the site.
Absolutely. We're all looking forward to your return, that's for sure. I think I told you off camera, but you were actually a big reason why I kind of got into all this, watching your videos quite a while ago, and really got into the AAF and the XFL 2020 and then all the way up into the USFL. And, now you're here today. So it's kind of cool how everything comes full circle like that. But then we also have Pierce. Pierce, go ahead and introduce yourself, resident Birmingham Stallions fan.
Yep, it's me. I think everybody knows me by now. Pure Sports Productions. Been here for SFR. Used to say it longer now, but now it's a bit shorter. And yeah, feeling very optimistic. Back to back champs. Gotta love it. And yeah, giddy up, baby.
Love it. Love it. So, Michael, we haven't gotten a chance to speak on camera since your Breakers unfortunately fell to the Stallions. So, what are your thoughts on the championship and how are you feeling tonight?
I mean, I'm feeling fine. I understand why Pierce is so excited, being a Cowboys fan and not winning anything, since the '90s. It must be really exciting. Uh, I can't really say too much. I'm a Washington fan, so I mean, and my defenders still didn't come through in the XFL, so it's miserable. Uh, no, the championship game, man, to basically just kick this off, dude. Like it was just like right before we got off on the predictions last time, I said that defense wins championships, and Pittsburgh had the best defense in all of the USFL. But the one thing that was differential between them and the Stallions was the Stallions had the number one red zone defense in the league, and it showed. That was the difference in this game. Was the Stallions completed drives where the Maulers didn't. The Maulers got down there, but their game resulted in field goals where the Stallions scored touchdowns. And anytime that happens, you're going to lose games no matter how good your defense is. I just thought that the Maulers had a good game plan. They controlled the time of possession. They kept the ball out of Magoo's hands. It just didn't work out the way that they expected it to because they were giving up the touchdowns where their offense wasn't keeping up with their defense. So it just ended up backfiring on them in the long run. Down the throughout the rest of the game, especially in the second half. So, it was what it was. There was a great season for the Maulers. Ray Horton should be, extremely proud up there. And they did have a chance to win this game. It just, the execution wasn't there for them. Whereas, the USFL MVP, rightfully so, the MVP just, kind of took over the game late. And there's the Stallions now. They're back to back champions.
Absolutely. So we'll go to the end zone here. Were you surprised to see Dion Kane as the game MVP? Did you expect it to be Magoo after his performance?
I mean, you could go both ways with MVP. There's always going to be a debate after every game. That game, speaking on some of your points, Michael, I think you hit the nail on the coffin. That game also kind of came down to what we knew about both teams the whole entire season. That Pittsburgh could not finish in the red zone. They were the same Pittsburgh team that was there all year long. Now, were they better than the inaugural season? Much better. And Ray Horton, like next year, I'm very excited to see where he takes this team. Another year, hopefully, with Troy Williams. I feel like this team can only get better from where they were, and the improvement that they showed was so impressive. So if I got to give an MVP to the season, taking that Pittsburgh Maulers team from 2022, which might be one of the worst spring football league teams I've ever seen, maybe up there with the Legends and the Alliance of American Football, if y'all remember that. Taking that team to a championship the next year was truly, truly incredible. But yeah, Deion Kane, I remember watching him at Clemson. Fantastic wide receiver. He was such a good addition. And you really got to credit Zach Potter, the GM of the Stallions, for getting the pickups. It's not like the Stallions came into the season healthy or had healthy players throughout the season. They were getting dinged up with injuries left and right. He did such a fantastic job, not only with the wide receiver position, but other positions as well.
100%. I mean, you look at Jay Sternberger and his run through the league this season. You look at Deion Kane. Despite all the injuries, they were still able to continue to put out a very talented team every week, which was very shocking, to be quite honest. And I was kind of pointing that out all season long. The fact that they won 2 years in a row, to me, this latest win is potentially more impressive because of how it came. Last year they were able to stay fairly healthy overall. This season it just wasn't the case. You saw right off the bat Jamar Smith gets injured, Alex Magoo takes over, and it was like there wasn't a drop off. There was actually possibly even a step up on the offensive side of the ball. So, Pierce, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about your team's depth and what it meant to win 2 years in a row. Which of these wins do you think was more difficult?
Well, I think first off, I'd like to shout out the Maulers for putting up a pretty fair game, I think, up until maybe the second half, where like their whole game plan was basically don't let our offense on the field. They are like, we're too good. We got to keep them off the field. Like time of possession, they ruled us over. Huge. But yet, like Michael said, the end zone, they just couldn't score. It was field goal, field goal, field goal. And then no matter how much we were less on the field, we still scored. And there was that fumble return that really scared me because I was like, we were basically going to roll it. We were going to win that. And then that happened. Like, and they still didn't. They missed the kick. Blew and missed the kick. And I'm like, wow. Like, that killed probably any momentum they had in that game, and they never even looked better after the fact. But when it comes to just going back to back, this one was the stronger season. I think this was the stronger win because I feel like the very first season, it was a bit easy. Like, I think overall we were just able to do better. Because for me, going into this season, I was like, all the other teams have gone better. Like, the Maulers have gone better. Panthers have because, they dropped coaches, got better ones. We got better weapons. So I'm like, it's going to be harder for the Stallions to be the same as they were last year, let alone the injuries that would get piled up after the fact. So the fact that they still were the number one seed, and they won the South Division, and they made it to the championship and win it again is a lot more impressive the second time around. And when it comes to like Deion Kane and Magoo for game MVP, I think it was very close, and you probably just dropped down to Magoo because of that fumble. But overall, this was just an awesome season for the Stallions, and going back to back, it feels really great.
I just want to echo a point that Endzone made with the GM down there, Potter. I think it's the last name, right? Yeah, I want to give him a shout out too because it's not just the Deion Kane and bringing him in. He has done such a fantastic job of bringing in people that fit this team's identity and fit right into what they want to do. Last year it was Bo Scarborough late in the season, or midway through the season, and then this year Scarborough gets hurt, and it's CJ Marable. And Marable provides more of a passing game that they don't really necessarily do a lot of with the running back side of things, but he was so invaluable throughout the season with that ability, especially with Magoo's scrambling ability and ability to stretch plays. Regardless if it was like, a 3rd and 2 when Magoo was in trouble, he was able to dump it off to Marable, who turned it into 27 yards or whatever it may be. So it wasn't just that side of thing. Jay Sternberger, just being able to find people and offensive line specifically, because it's so hard to find quality offensive line in these alternative leagues. To be able to see what they see in some of these guys and to bring in to fit their system, like, just shout out to him overall for doing a great job. It's got nothing even necessarily to do with the depth as much as it's just finding pieces that fit their system regardless of what is happening around them.
That's a great point.
I was going to say Ricky Person Jr. was another like really good ad out of NC State late in the season that they had that I think really helped, and he had a pretty good game in the championship as well. So
definitely, Ricky Person Jr., former IFL player with I assume this is Krish's Massachusetts Pirates. So yeah, definitely, it's always awesome to see those IFL guys get a chance and move up to the next level. We're always huge fans of those guys getting an opportunity. So speaking of getting an opportunity at the next level, we saw that Deion Kane, just before we came on live here, was signed by an NFL team, or the precursor to signed. He was let go by the USFL in order to be able to sign with an NFL team. Pierce, I know I asked you this off camera. Who is your thought on who he might have signed with?
So I got two options here, and I think it's going to be teams he's played with before. I think Eagles is a very strong one for me. You know, they've already brought in Charleston Rambo from the XFL, so it wouldn't be too surprising they brought in some more of that spring football talent. And he was on the team before the USFL. And another one I like is the Steelers. There was, I think the Steelers would be a nice fit for him, and working with Kenny Pickett, who I think is going to be, gradually better than last year. But those are my two guesses for sure. But I think strongly Eagles over Steelers, but very fair to who could pick them up.
Enzo, any thoughts from you?
yeah, I mean, I don't really know the certainties as to which team he could go, but both would be incredible fits. Just Deion Kane, I think what he struggled with at Clemson, like coming out of college, was dropping balls, but he's always been fast. We saw that in the USFL, and he always played bigger than he actually is size-wise. And I think that whatever team is going to get him is just a fantastic pickup because he really showed that he belongs and he stood out as a receiver in the USFL. He was a unicorn this year in the USFL. He was definitely dominant.
I love that term, unicorn. That's awesome. So looking forward, I mean, Michael, before we move on, any particular teams that kind of stick out to you as far as who could have signed Deion Kane at the NFL level?
Well, there's a couple that come to mind. I mean, obviously I mentioned Pittsburgh off air. The Steelers off air and whatnot. He played there before. They don't really have much after, Pickens and Deontay Johnson. They did sign Hakeem Butler. Calvin Austin Jr. was hurt last year. He was a rookie. He's in his second year. So it gets kind of shady a little bit, with no pun intended, for after the top two guys. And then, after that, I would say the Giants. They've kind of revamped this entire wide receiving core, but it's still basically a bunch of who's who. It's Isaiah Hodgins, who's been cut and released about 45 times. Paris Campbell, who can't quite stay healthy. They have a Darius Slayton, who can't stay healthy. So like it's a whole Sterling Shepard, who I don't think has been on the field, for a full season in like 4 seasons. So I'm not sure. The Colts. He played with the Colts before. It's another team that he has a little bit of a history with. It's a different staff now. They're moving a little bit in a different direction, but they don't truly have a guy that can kind of take the top off the defense. Really, Michael Pittman's more of your possession, big body receiver. He's not really a big play guy. Paris Campbell's gone. They did sign Isaiah McKenzie, but more people view him as like around that slot receiver, around the offensive line type of guy. So, the Colts would be another one. And then one other team that kind of sticks out to me that might be a possibility, primarily because they're not happy with the trade that they made, and that's Chase Claypool. the Chicago Bears because of Chase Claypool. The Bears don't have that. Darnell Mooney can kind of be that guy, and they brought in DJ Moore, but they drafted Tyler Scott. They still don't really have that big play capabilities from that slot receiver spot. So it is an opportunity for Dion to kind of get into that role there. But his drops that's really what his biggest problem has been, is the drops. It's the same as Hakeem Butler, and the reason why both of those guys are playing spring ball this year and not actually in the NFL.
100%. Looks like we got another guest waiting in the green room, so I'm going to go ahead and bring them both on. So we got Zach Kyleman from the USFL podcast, and then Krish is hopefully going to be able to join us for an extended period. He's had some internet issues here behind the issue.
Man, internet's going crazy out here in Boston, man. Jesus
so I wanted to go to Zach next. Zach, do you have any ideas where Dion Kane might have signed?
Good question. I don't have anything immediate, although I did jump in a little bit to the conversation on the Bears. I don't know if I agree with that take. I think that Darnell Mooney and Tyler Scott and company are good slot options, to be honest with you. I also think that Chase Claypool is going to be more actively in the offense, and DJ Moore is going to be on the one option. That's the only reason I don't agree.
Well, that I understand that, but there's already been offseason reports about Chase Claypool not being self-motivated. They're not happy with his work ethic. They're not happy with his work ethic. And I don't view Tyler Scott and Darnell Mooney as the take the top off the defense type. Dion Kane has that capability. That's the reason why I mentioned it from the slot. Is he has some pretty decent straight line speed. It's what we saw. It's what we saw in Chicago, Indianapolis, and in Pittsburgh when he was there.
I mean, Tyler Scott's speed was one of the talks of the town reasons why they picked him up anyway. So I mean, if you're talking off the top as a deep threat, that already puts him as that position. So that's kind of my angle. I think he's more of a gadget player, honestly, until they find out what he can do beyond just being a speedster. Chase Claypool is the big anomaly, though. I get your point with that. I'm worried about it. I didn't like the Chase Claypool trade, to be honest with you. I'm a Bears fan. I wish they hadn't done it. I thought it was a horrible trade. I thought they should have just gone for a draft
awful. Oh, it was horrendous.
I'm with you there. But until they fully decide to kick him to the curb, they got to run with him as a 2 because they've kind of made their bed with that. So that's the only reason I disagree. I get your point, though.
You think Claypool's a 2?
I mean, in this offense, he kind of has to be.
You don't think Mooney's the 2?
No,
I'm sorry.
Mooney's the one.
His size fits
over
better
DJ
as a
Moore.
Sorry,
DJ
Moore's the one. My fault.
Oh yeah, DJ Moore is definitely the one.
They traded him. He has to be the one.
He better be the one.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll let you get back. I apologize. I love talking football.
No, you're good.
Great start. I love it. Look, Kane, I'm trying to think here, like what would be great options for Kane. I'm just thinking of someone, honestly, if we're talking, I think I'm looking for like special teams options anyway. Things first.
I like him in Pittsburgh.
Well, I think you can see, I mean, he already has relationships with Pittsburgh in the past, so it's not too crazy to look at. You know,
Baltimore, Philadelphia.
I think Colts need some assistance. Baltimore maybe for depth. I guess I could see that one too. But kind of
he's also a Tampa kid. That'd be kind of cool.
Tampa could use a lot. Although I would actually like my whole theory, if I'm talking guys that are signing now that I really want as a pairing, is I really want Alex Magoo over in Tampa Bay. You got the Tampa Bay connection. And honestly, that QB room, I know Kyle Trask was picked up as possibly this future prospect for him. You got Baker Mayfield coming in that's riding that pseudo high from the LA season that he had. But I want to throw Magoo in. Anything should be on the table in the QB room. So if you're going to find someone that is, I think, a gritty kid that's from the area, that's coming off of a pretty damn good season, and is a mobile QB, even more mobile, I think, than the other 2 options, throw him in there, see what he's got, and then have at it. I don't think he, of course, starts as like an immediate threat to take that job, but why not throw him in as someone that can compete and say, hey, you know what? This ain't an easy gig. You guys do have to fight for this in training camp. We are going to evaluate you in preseason. So why not? I'm glad to see Dion Kane is going somewhere, though. That man, I think it's amazing. His season went from more of a utility guy that was being kind of just thrown as needed to someone that did become, as the year went on, a versatile piece of that receiving core for the Stallions. which of course accumulated in an all-purpose yardage of 171 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an MVP in the championship. Well-deserved on his part.
No doubt. Krish, any thoughts on where Deion Kane might have landed in the NFL, and then we'll go ahead and move on.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Deion Kane since his days at Clemson. I mean, he was crazy, before he decided to smoke a little bit of the dust. But I think overall, man, he's a great receiver. I think he's down there in Baltimore. I think they added him to the receiving core. About Chicago, I love Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is probably one of my favorite receivers in the league. Him and obviously Henry Ruggs, but I think Darnell is top of the tier. DJ is incredible, but like Chase has his issues, obviously coming from Pittsburgh last year. Chase has had one of the high to low NFL moments we've seen in a while. He went from up here, one of the top receivers in the league. You could argue at one point he was top 10 receiver in the league, the way he was playing. But then he kind of fell off the curb. Baltimore's a good fit, Odell, Zay, Deion, he would fit really good in that offense. It's a running offense. I could be wrong, but I feel like the Baltimore offense is very similar to the Birmingham offense in a way. They run a lot of RPO, different stuff like that, but I don't know. I think it's Baltimore. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's the Patriots. My Patriots have a tendency to pick up guys, second chances. So either way, I think he's going to be really good in the NFL. On special teams, even as a receiver 3 somewhere, I think he's going to do really well. So I'm happy for Deion.
It'll definitely be interesting.
There is one more team I'm surprised nobody's mentioned.
Who's that?
The Rams. Because think about it, they have Cooper Kupp. Can anybody name their true number 2 on that team? Because right now it's Van Jefferson. So
Jefferson,
and I don't think Lance McCutcheon or Puka Nasu, I don't think either one of them have return capabilities there as far as the receiving side is concerned. So they're probably going to look at the cornerback position again, and teams are kind of shying away from that cornerback spot for that. So, the Rams are a possibility. I think they still might only have 25 people on roster too. It's crazy.
with the added room, you could take a shot at. You might as well. That's not a bad option. They had to move on from Allen Robinson, of course, this past year for chemistry issues or whatnot. Best I can put. And you might as well have that depth and see who can be that next man up there behind, say, like a Jefferson or a Skoranek out there that could get a shot. But you definitely talk the return capabilities. Right now, I'm going off ESPN's depth charts. Obviously, you can't rely on those 100%, but they give a little bit of at least a picture somewhat. Returning options for them, they have listed as Tutu Atwell as the main guy.
Oh, yeah, Tutu. That's right. I forgot.
But,
5'6".
Look, the way Kane, at least for kickoff returns, is a little bit better. Maybe you have someone that has a better specialization in terms of returning kicks that can take that chance. Obviously, with the NFL's rules, I hope that he gets those opportunities. That's the only downside. But,
yeah, no doubt.
Thank you for reminding me about the rule change.
Oh, I know. It's why doesn't matter which league has their own rule set. Both of them are better than what the NFL offers in terms of kickoffs. It doesn't matter which way you spin it. I like either one of the spring league's kickoff return rules. They just work. So
I like that. I like that point. So we got one more guest waiting, and we're gonna go ahead and pull him in right before we move on. Analyze and educate Pat Ruffino, XFL News Hub, USFL News Hub writer.
The legend.
How's it going, Pat?
The legend, the man.
Yeah. How are we doing on the sound? I'm trying a new portable mic right now.
Sounds good.
Hell yeah. Are we on this Deion Kane train? Can I offer some?
I don't think the train stops. So
yeah. I always go anytime I see wide receiver signing, I go to the Lions because they had 3 of those guys get suspended and they released 2 of them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much of the best fit he'd be because from what I remember, when you had Marlon Williams there, he was doing some kick coverage, which that's kind of where I stay. Can these guys cover kicks? Because guess what? I don't need you to run for 500 yards rushing. I need you to block on third down, and I need you to cover kicks if you're joining my NFL team. Not until it'll be about week 14. But yeah, I mean, versatile guy, because I do like Maurice Alexander there in Detroit, but he's not the biggest guy, and he's probably not the best tackler. So I hate to see 1-for-1 USFL or alt league swaps. It's not really my preferred measure of doing business, but I mean, that's, if you can't cover kicks and you can't play one or two special teams, I don't have much use for you as my player, 48 to 53.
It's cutthroat out there, so
100%.
Honestly, I think Detroit's not a bad option because of the suspension choices, so I love that, Pat. Honestly, Jameson Williams being a big question for the first few weeks. I think you're going to see who's going to be that next other person to step in. Not saying Kane is going to be your end-all, be-all, because like your point to bring up, any of these guys coming out, it's all about just getting a roster spot. Where do you fit best as it is? And you hope that it then then elevates to something else. Like say Maurice Alexander getting that kick return duty, excellent stuff. Obviously he'd love to be getting catches if he could, but he's fitting and finding a need out there in Detroit. Great for him. So if you can add more depth that way too and fit the need, special teams in particular usually being that case, it's awesome for that guy who can hit that spot on the roster.
Yeah. I think we get lost in these guys' sexy stats too much in alt football. And I try, and I'm going to sound like a broken record because I think anytime we talk about this is, a guy like Reggie Corbin, right? And you have the casuals who watch these leagues and they're like, oh, he was all USFL. Why is he not in the NFL? Well, have you seen him on third down?
Right, yeah.
The answer is no. But he did do a good job this year of being better. Like I think last year he had 6 receptions. I feel like this year the number 19 is what sticks out to me. It could be plus or minus, but I wrote an article last year. It's like, what does Reggie Corbin have to do to get to the NFL? Well, he has to play like Cam Scarlett did last year for the Panthers, and obviously Cam didn't play this year in the USFL or last year in the NFL. But I mean, Cam was on every special teams. He had some bad fumbles last year, so maybe that's part of the reason why. But regardless, I mean, it seems like it was more of a personal decision for him not to play football because, he's young enough, and seems that they only carried 2 running backs going for the first 6 weeks, the Panthers, that is. But these guys got to do a lot of different things, man. And, it's upping your versatility. And some of these guys and casuals that watch the game, they don't get that. I don't need, these guys to get 700 yards in 10 games. I need them to do the dirty work. And some of these guys, like Cam Phillips is a perfect example. Couldn't play special teams, couldn't return kicks. That's why he's in Canada.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. So moving on to other players that deserve an NFL shot, I wanted to get some of your guys' opinions on guys who haven't been signed yet that you think deserve a shot. Obviously, we've got the Alex Magoo's who are quite obvious, but maybe we'll find some other names that fans aren't familiar with. So let's go to End Zone first and see what he's got for us.
I think it's tough because you got to evaluate who's best on special teams. But, I mean, sticking maybe with the Stallions, maybe a guy like Jay Sternberger, I would have liked to see him not drop as many passes as he did. That was kind of the knock, like, coming out of college. I don't know. I'm trying to think of, like, I'd really doubt any other quarterbacks other than Alex Magoo will get into the NFL if Alex Magoo does. Just because, like, the quarterback play was so up and down outside. I will say this, though. Case Cook is next year. Case is a guy who has the talent. That offensive line was so bad this year. They took such a massive step back. But, like, I was sitting on the sideline. I listened to people talk about him, higher up people, and they're like, he's got the anticipation. First of all, he's so tough. You look for that in like a scout team quarterback. If you can make it to a scout team, you'll get a beating a lot of the time. So I'm kind of excited to see. It's always tough to just see like which guys also fit mentally. What's kind of sad about leagues like this is some of the guys are there physically, but a lot of guys are not mentally ready to be a full-time football player in the NFL. And a lot of them have those issues, and those are things that you can't really see on the TV screen.
That's a great point. It's a great point that a lot of people do not speak about. Let's go to Pat. I know you just wrote an article about, I believe it was 10 NFL players that deserve an NFL shot. So why don't you hit us with a few of the players from your article?
So Tizino was a pretty easy one. Ginda, this guy's been playing pro ball since 2019 or 2018 rather, and he he still hasn't played in a regular season game. Levi Bell is a guy who's very intriguing to me because he has a similar skill set in a mix between Elvis Dumervil and Patrick Richard, and ironically, he played on the Ravens, which is, they both played there. He played on the Ravens for about 14 minutes, I believe. But that being said, Levi Bell is someone to look out for. I mean, there's the super casual or the super easy ones like Breland Speaks. I think Davion Davis is kind of in that role. Corey Coleman, guys who had that taste of the NFL that were kind of like just taking their from a non-guaranteed contract to a guaranteed contract type thing. But one guy to look out for, in my opinion, and it's not the sexiest name, is EJ Perry. Big thing about these guys, in my opinion, is how recent were you to an NFL team? Perry was on the practice squad last year for the Jags. He was with the Texans for the offseason up until 15 minutes ago. Guy shows a lot of improv, a lot of athleticism, and he was recently with an NFL team. So, all it takes is, Davis Mills or Case Keenum to get hurt. God forbid. The gentleman they just brought in, was it CJ Stroud or Bryce Young? I'm sorry. I haven't been following the NFL player draft as much as I should have. But, just one of those guys. And then all of a sudden, Perry's back in camp. I mean, we haven't seen many injuries yet in the OTAs and whatnot. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think they were under 50 last year before the injury bug started hitting the NFL teams. And then you saw guys like Mitch Fabroni, Tucker Addington, Taylor Berteret, Ramiz Ahmad got a shot. There's one more gentleman who was signed. I mean, Case Cook has got back on the roster. He technically wasn't in the USFL, but James Morgan got another opportunity. Carson Strong, when those injuries started happening in Arizona at quarterback. So, I mean, you don't wish ill on these players, especially at the highest level. But, I mean, it does happen, and it does open the floodgate to guys who are in game shape versus guys who got cut in May.
100% it does, and unfortunately that is part of the way that these guys get opportunities. Injuries are a big deal every year in these NFL, in the NFL, the USFL, all these different leagues, so it ends up causing turnover everywhere. Zach, who are some guys that you would think would deserve an opportunity at the next level?
Well, I do like Pat's take on kind of looking at recency and kind of connections like that. How much were you already at that step or nearby that step? So one guy that comes to mind instantly is I want to see Bailey Gaither. I think he'll get another shot instantly. Showed out his worth once more, second straight year in the league. Had a healthier season, of course, to go along with that, and was a consistent contributor with the Maulers, I think, to an even better degree than he was last year with the Pittsburgh Maulers. So I think he gets a shot. I think he should get a look again, whether it is to be in a receiver room for depth, whether it is to try and maybe focus on seeing if he can stick somewhere else for more of the special teams angle. Otherwise, I was a big fan of, and I understand he might have a bit of flaws given his game, I think Imani Dennis is someone that should get a look. Help was tying up with, of course, interceptions, more of a ball hawk at cornerback. That is, of course, his game because he plays that style. It does lead to a bit of a risk sometimes in some of the coverage he's in, but I do like some of the more risky taking and bit more of the, I guess, eye for the prize, if you will, at going after the ball. Something that not every cornerback I watch in this game does very well. A lot of them play more the reactionary style where, you wait for the catch, you try and knock it out, which is fine. But I'm more the guy where if you can read the eyes, if you can read the receiver's intentions and you're able to react like that, that's someone I enjoy. I think Imani really showed that when he was at his peaks during this year. And I think that's someone that I definitely want to see in the NFL, or at least getting another shot. Obviously, both those positions, extremely competitive. Cornerbacks and receivers are a dime a dozen. You can even go with running backs being that way. So it's harder for me I want to root for guys, but I know understandably so it's going to be harder to have that position stick. But those are two I definitely think should get some chances. Honestly, I could list the Maulers defense, just go and start picking and choosing, if you will. I know there's reports Reuben Foster's getting looks, so I'm expecting he should at least get some sort of shot. And I think his redemption arc alone deserves that shot. So I cannot wait to see where he gets picked up. I feel very confident he's going to be one of those names that will definitely get called to at least get on a camp and say, hey, I still was the same guy that left a few years ago. I'm back and ready to play full in the NFL and get myself back in order to where I was meant to be.
We're going to stick a pin in that because I want to come back to that thought process. Chris, who are some players that you see from the USFL getting an NFL shot?
I mean, you know who I'm going to say around. I'm going to say my boy Toby. You know what I mean? Like, Toby, he's dominated the USFL. He has no legal issues. All right, so he hasn't been, like, doesn't even have a speeding ticket. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's one of those guys. I know Toby personally. 11 o'clock, I mean, he might be drinking some. He's not going out. He's not. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's staying at home. He's drinking his drinks, but he won't go out on the road. You know what I'm saying? So he's a great guy. He deserves a chance. I hear you talking a lot about your boy Channing Stribling. Like, you're missing Levante Taylor. Like, if Channing Stribling can get looks, why can't Levante Taylor get one look? Levante Taylor is so young. He's younger than Channing Stribling, by the way. He's probably I want to say he's 25. He's just a great, all-around athlete. He didn't let up one touchdown all year. So I think those guys need to get looks. They need to go a little deeper dive. Because, with cornerbacks and positions like that, they don't always stick out of the page. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to really watch the game, look at stats to figure out, okay, this guy's the best. But, I hope, I seeing, a guy like Toby have to be in the league year after year, getting first team, getting this, getting that. He's just wasting his time. You know what I mean? At this point, you might as well just play for the Pirates the whole season, if you're not going to get the call up. Because it's why are these guys who are dominating not getting called? And it's year after year. So I'm just hoping, the Stars kicker, I think his name is Luis Aguilar, right? He should get the call. Chris Rowland, he unfortunately didn't play long enough. He should have been. If he was healthy the whole year, he would have 100% got that call. But, other than that, Mark Thompson, right, that's another name we're missing. I don't know why he has not gotten an opportunity yet after 2 years in a row. Although he did have an incident. He got arrested a year and a half ago, so probably because of that. But, 365 days removed from that, I think he's ready to go. So, it's all about looking at who has legal issues, who doesn't, who has a past. And if you don't have a past, it doesn't hurt to send a guy to a camp. So I'm just hoping to see more guys. My final guy that I hope gets a chance is that receiver from the Gamblers. What's his name? Anthony Radcliffe Williams, right?
Mm-hmm.
From North Carolina. Oh, my God. He is so cold. I hope he gets into a team somewhere. He would be a great fit for the Indianapolis Colts. I could see him really shining in Indianapolis. So I'm excited, and I just hope, all my guys get the fair opportunity that they deserve.
I believe he was in Indianapolis, actually. Right
Really?
before, I think he was. I think he was in camp with them last year.
That's crazy.
Interesting. Pierce, any USFL players that you think deserve an NFL shot? I'm sure there's a couple Stallions on that list.
I try not to list all the Stallions for this one. I will just say one for this one. But CJ Marable, I think it's pretty simple. He was high up there in all purpose, so he can run, he can pass. He's usually pretty much clutching the third downs. Like, he can do much. And I think he did some kick returns. I can't remember off the top of my head. So, like, he can do a lot, and I think he can really fit anywhere because of how much he can do. Another one I'm just going to go off, considering that he was in the USFL big and then went to the NFL, was Sage Surratt for the Breakers. He went to the Chargers after he went to the Stallions, and it just didn't work out. But I wouldn't be surprised if a team looks at him again just because of that recent, connection. And going off the Gamblers, Justin Hall put up a couple big games. I think he's my dark horse of, like, a person. Justin Hall was pretty great. I just wish he had a better quarterback. Sorry, Bahar. And Tizino, he's been consistent 2 years in a row. Like, he needs to at least – somebody needs to give him a call. Like, that dude's been killing in the USFL and staying healthy and staying consistent. So that dude definitely needs a shot.
100%. Great picks all around. Michael, finally, all the way up to you. What are your players that deserve an NFL shot?
Honestly, first and foremost, Pat Beard on point. I mean, that thing is fantastic, man. I mean, it puts this to shame. Hey, I mean, look, you got just as much hair on your face as you do your head.
Yeah.
Hey.
No, we're doing some. We're trying to get what is it? Short King summer with our flow going in our hair right now. So
okay, all right, fair.
Moves.
I think when you take a look at these, though, back on track, now that I just derailed everything, these guys are playing in these spring leagues for a reason. One reason or another, regardless of what it may be. Like Reuben Foster has a legitimate gripe as to why he's not playing and should be able to get back in. Corey Coleman was a former first-round pick who didn't quite pan out, but he should turn around and, get another chance because he's, grinding and he's showing that he can. But is it where he wants to be? That's the biggest question with these guys. Is it where you want to be? Because especially at the wide receiver position, especially at the running back position, the league is oversaturated with these guys. And when you're a little bit older, we talked about this before in the chat, Sam and Krish, actually. When you're a veteran that has had played X amount of years, you have a veteran minimum. So it in the NFL, it messes with, your salary cap in that sense, when you can find yourself an undrafted rookie free agent to come in and fill out those 4 years. It's not a huge difference, but it's enough of a difference to make a difference overall when you're talking about 53, players at the end of the day. So a guy like Boogie Roberts, he's 27 years old, but are you going to pay him the minimum of 2-year deal that we saw some of the XFL players get? That's your question, right? And defensive line depth is always something that you could really use. And Boogie is a guy that has a motor. So I could see him even getting a rotational play at the next level because that's a more direct path than like a wide receiver, in my opinion. And then another guy that I'm surprised nobody has mentioned is Breland Speaks. Another former second-round pick. He kind of dominated on the edge there. I mean, granted, it's quote-unquote against lesser competition, but he was a guy who looked like he had everything that he needed to improve on. He improved on as the season went on for Michigan. So those are the types of guys that I think are going to be more apt to get to the NFL that aren't going to contribute on a special teams level to be able to actually see in a more rotational type of situation, especially along the defensive line. Offensive line is another big one too. Linebackers, cornerbacks. Cornerbacks is the second most difficult position to find like quality depth at in these leagues. So anytime you get a guy that's like at that position, those are the kind of guys that you could see playing time at the next level, more so than I think wide receivers, running backs, and we always focus on those guys because they're the ones who put up the stats. Like Pat said, it's the grinding side of things that you want to see. Who's doing the dirty work type of stuff. So that is the big question. Like, we all want to just throw out Alex Magoo, right? And just be like, oh, Alex Magoo, because he MVP, he looked good, he looked like he was really well on that, blah, blah, blah. But what's stopping teams from signing Alex Magoo, including, especially with this emergency 3 situation. And it's probably contract more than anything, to be completely honest with you. Those are the types of things that we have to factor in. And also on top of that, you think about Alex Magoo, and we mentioned this also, Sam, when I asked how many people had signed. Is the USFL season at such a disadvantage that these players are going to have to wait for an injury, especially when it comes this close to camp? Because think about it. I mean, there is no reason why some of these guys haven't been able to sign, and we've just seen trickling. Just trickling so far, just with signings.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're ahead because it took a minute last year. I think it was like the last week of July. It all shotgun because I feel like Christian Sam was signed like July 5th, and then we didn't really see anything for a minute because it was very random, the Christian Sam signing, and then all of a sudden it was just like shotgun. So,
right, but you got to remember too. Last year, Pat, there was no XFL.
Oh, 100.
So that plays another factor into this too. Wrong. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm wondering if the USFL is going to be at a disadvantage. I mean, this is obviously the first season, so obviously it can still balance out, and we're still early in July, so there's still a possibility. But I mean,
to be fair, this has been talked about. I guess it's now year 2 of this discussion because we knew last year going in that the XFL was going to have the earlier start, and so you're going to have players discussing that. My thing is that I'm kind of on Pat's angle here, where I'm seeing, we're getting 3 already under in 1 week. There's already talks of several others rumored that are going to be coming up that we're waiting to see on. I know Alex Magoo's already said he's got 2 opportunities, at least for tryouts, and I know the USFL doesn't really talk as much the tryout angle. They more sit and wait on the signing. So a little bit undercover. I do think that it's a fascinating proposition. That is how I put it in terms of how we're going to see the evaluation of talent and in terms of how these leagues will be decided on as to who picks and chooses from what. Obviously, there's the earlier release versus the month out gap where it's not as much time to heal up, get ready to go. You got to kind of rush things to get signings and tryouts and all that because you're released on July 2nd. But I mean, I do think that at least we'll at least hold on until the end of the month and kind of figure this out. I do find your point, Michael, on the fact of injuries. Yes, that is definitely, I think, something that if you're a USFL signee, I hate saying it, but that might be one thing that comes up because you're later in the process of getting players. You might have to cycle back out. We did see some of those guys come in because of injuries last year. That being said, it's only been 1 week since we've had a championship for the most part. So that's the only reason I'm kind of like, we got 3 people, so I'm going to hit the pause a little bit on that discussion.
No, for sure, absolutely, and I don't, and by any means, it's not an anti-USFL narrative that other people push with that. No. But I'm just saying, for me though, it's not an anti-USFL narrative that a lot of other people use to push for it. It just, if I'm an NFL team and I'm looking at the USFL, whereas here's all, like, for instance, Sam and Pierce, we talked a little bit about this with the New Orleans Breakers game. MBT and West Hills, they played a shit ton of football in a calendar year, and they went in against New Orleans and looked absolutely fatigued. Like, West Hills had that first good drive, and then after that it just kind of tapered off, and the same with MBT. They both looked like they were tired. So if I'm an NFL team, am I looking at this from a standpoint where, do I want to go out and sign a guy who just played 10, 11, 12 games and doesn't have, like you were saying, that much time of a layoff to heal up a little bit? Or do I want to go back and to maybe look at the XFL pool like an Abram Smith that was mentioned in the chat, if you're looking for a running back who hasn't signed yet? So he's been kind of healed up. So that's kind of where I'm wondering how the USFL is going to do this, because I don't think moving the season up is the correct answer for the USFL either. So that's kind of where I'm wondering, where are these players going to look at once we start getting into year 3, 4 of both leagues? That's where I'm going with that.
Well, it's the grand experiment, isn't it? I mean, I find this whole thing fascinating, to be honest with you. That's me looking at this in terms of the football cycle and how you see scouts and everyone evaluate talent and how they look at the player that comes out and the time frame of the year. That's fascinating to me. I have no qualms or debate on that. I actually sit back and kind of look at this as from afar and going, okay, let's see how, football talent evaluators look at this. Now, my only thing, if I'm putting, I guess, the July timeframe, and credit, I understand you got to heal up a little bit. And so I'm usually more for that. Say you're a healthy player that comes out of the USFL. My angle is you're already conditioned in a way. You've been practicing for months. You've been basically keeping your mental, your physical, your cardio all in order for in-season play already. So you have little time off, but in essence, you're basically ready to go out of the gate as long as you haven't been banged up. And I think that's the key caveat. As long as you haven't been banged up to a severe degree, you do have that physical attribute and at least something along the mental attribute that you get to kind of transfer over to a team. You don't get to say you don't get to say no as much as the coaching staffs or anything like that. So you got to, of course, jump in a little later in that process and kind of catch up. But I do think there is some aspect, if you are healthy getting out of the season, that cardio level does help to you hit the ground running and say, okay, you'll hit our weight and physical training program, but at least you've already been used to this a little bit. So we can kind of start more focusing on the basics and what we want out of you instead of having to catch you up in the OTAs and things like that because you've been through that ringer. But again, grand experiment. That's what I love about this. I think that's what's amazing is the landscape right now with the two major ones that are in there, that are outside, that are in North America, in the U.S., not talking the CFL, just the USFL and the XFL here, it's the grand experiment, which mindset and philosophy works, which standardization of that time frame works. I love sitting from afar and analyzing it.
100%. That's what's fascinating about having both of these leagues go at the same time. We've seen the XFL window by itself before. We've seen the USFL window by itself before, but this is the first offseason in my entire lifetime that we've seen two leagues at once, kind of not necessarily competing, but just seeing how each business model really works. Because if you look at them, quite honestly, the XFL is approaching things 100% different than the USFL and vice versa. I mean, they're almost night and day. It's so different. So it's kind of interesting to watch how both have had their successes and both have had their failures for sure.
If you look at the waiver wires, guys, since that big push of XFL players, I counted it a couple days ago, and I think it was like 27 open roster spots, and that doesn't include teams that have they're at 88 with 2 unsigned draft picks. And obviously we saw Peterson got signed, but then there was a player release. Like the Jags were at 89 with an unsigned or 90, I can't remember. So it's, in my opinion, these teams are waiting for the dust to settle on these USFL guys because they've had the opportunity the last 8 weeks to sign NFL or XFL guys to the NFL squad. So it's
sure.
I think we will see that massive, I don't want to use the word massive, but that next push of USFL guys to fill up these roster spots. And I think once you get to the middle of August, I think that's when we'll kind of see the another version of these football wars because these NFL teams have the tape. A lot of these guys work with their buddies and whatnot, all that goofy stuff. They all they know who these XFL guys are now. So maybe they have that short list for that running back of let's say Abram Smith, Max Borghi and Mark Thompson. Okay, let's see how really break down the Thompson film. We're going to sign an alt-league running back or, one of these undrafted free agents that we had in our mini camp. But we really wanted to look at Thompson. Okay, Thompson made the grade or he didn't make the grade. We're going to sign Borghi or, instead. So I feel like that's going to happen now because I think, there's a lot of players in the USFL that may be on the short list for these NFL teams. The season's over. Let's evaluate. Okay, we'll sign, the guy from North Dakota State versus, Mark Thompson or Max Borghi because now we know what we got going on because there's no point in signing a guy and then getting rid of him in 2 weeks, especially you put a sour taste in his mouth. We've seen it before. The guy signs with the Browns. He does training camp with the Steelers. And he's like, hey, man, what's that playbook? They cut him August 31st. It's happened.
And I think you bring up a good point, and this is the other point that I'm sitting like when it comes back to sitting back and kind of watching as well, is what or if, because it's still an if, is there an advantage for XFL players with their season ending earlier on making the roster instead of coming in a little bit later in the season, in the off season, and just being there for preseason or whatever else, and then getting cut in that final cut coming out of the preseason? That's going to be interesting to see if there's any type of correlation to that. I don't think there necessarily will be, because a lot of these guys are in the same boat for the most part. But if you think about it from a standpoint, like having that advantage of being there for most of the offseason with certain teams where you sign earlier definitely puts you in an advantage. I mean, we discuss it all the time in the chat, Sam, about players coming in later on. So that should be something that we can kind of keep in a little bit of an eye on too, from a a standpoint. Like Zach said, it's a trial and error situation here. It's all a testing.
Mm-hmm. Still the youth of this whole thing. I think that's the big deal, is that you have two leagues still very much early on in their stints. And so even NFL scouts and, those that are kind of recruiting, trying to figure out, hey, do we want to take this balance of an undrafted free agent? Do we want these guys that are in these spring leagues? How does it work? Which guys work better from what leagues? What league has proponent? What league I think helps show off a better skill set than another? I mean, it's amazing. We're only 2 years in, but we have so much that we can at least talk about in terms of early kind of data and seeing that. At least I think, if anything, the respect for guys getting to play at least a little bit to show that in-game tape, I hope keeps getting exasperated in this. And the more that shows off, whether either one of these, I do hope that keeps showing off and saying, it's better to have a guy that you can show that has that on-field production, maybe that on-field growth, not just showing the same old thing you did a few years ago, but showing, hey, I've gone over and I've corrected some of the things that maybe you saw from my college tape that maybe I've gotten better in maybe 2 years. That way I'm still a youngish player, but I developed, and now you want to pick me up. Maybe I can get rostered, or maybe I can do something more than what you originally saw from me at the time. I'll admit, like with End Zone here, Sternberger, I love him as a talent, but he's absolutely right where the catches still are a bit of a problem, where I'm like, that's going to ding some people with him coming in. Wherever he lands, I hope he were to land a spot, but I also be going, man, you dropped a few too many balls for me to be, I think, as impressed, given the stat sheet, great stat sheet, but there's a lot of catchable stuff this year where I'm like, man, I got to back off. Or like Joe Walker, same deal. And I'm a Panthers fan, so you can imagine how I felt about Joe Walker back half of the season. Definitely going, great player when he gets the ball and catches it, but you got to catch it, and you got to use your hands, not your chest, my guy.
100%. That's a great point about Joe Walker in particular. We got a question in the comments regarding 2023 rookies drafted by both the USFL and XFL. Wouldn't it make more sense as a rookie to just sign with the XFL first, and then if it doesn't work out for you, get cut, go to the USFL? We've actually addressed that on this channel very recently. We discussed it last time. And due to the timing of the XFL, in my personal opinion, yes, it does make sense to take that opportunity with the XFL training camp. And then ultimately, if you get cut, you do have a chance. That isn't to say that just because you get cut from the XFL, the USFL team's going to immediately sign you. But you do have a chance to, participate in the USFL training camp, and then possibly even a CFL training camp later on as well. It just depends on when you're cut and how the timing all works out. But yes, logically, I think that is the best case scenario for rookies. But anybody else got some thoughts on that?
How much money did Kyle Slother make this year?
Ooh, yeah.
For doing nothing.
He's got to be over 6 figures.
Two rings, man.
Still don't want him on my roster.
Kyle 2 rings.
Get him off
Kyle
my
2
roster,
rings.
please.
You get the bag. I mean, look, sometimes it just comes down. You get the checks.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. Perfect example of that question, though, Davion Davis with the Stallions. The exact person, started out with the Roughnecks, was released on March 3rd. 8 days later, he signs on with the Stallions, and guess what? He's one of the top receivers in the USFL by the end of the season. pretty much was the number one option for the majority of his time with the Stallions. I mean, that's the exact, I think, example is, that is a benefit. If you are the USFL and you are needing some guys to come in, you see someone that you like, but you didn't get that chance to pick him up under contract, and you get him fully out in the market, it's free game. That's someone you can be like, hey, you want to come on in, still want to play and get some tape? Here's your option. You don't have to sit and wait around. Come on and jump in, get active on there. That's the perfect example.
Jordan McRae probably had a pretty close to $100,000 a year himself, because I think he was active for probably 7 or 8, and then he was rostered the whole year with the Showboats, I'm pretty sure. So I mean, 50 something from Memphis, 40 something, but he definitely made like a little bit of money with the Brahmas. I mean, Kai Abashir was on like 14 teams this year before he retired. Which the Battlehawks lost that trade, but hey,
Yeah.
Hey, another point. Antonio Garcia was with DC Defenders, then he was with the Stars. That guy made some good money, even though a lot of the games he was inactive for DC due to injury. Then you have situations like, which I thought was kind of interesting. We had, man, I'm blanking his name. Jared Jones Smith, is it? From St. Louis.
It's not him, because he
went to the NFL.
Yeah, he played all 10 games, and he's with Washington right now.
Sorry, what I was going to say is that he got signed, and then Himmelman got cut, and then came to the Stars. So kind of interesting to see that cyclical movement of this whole situation as well. So it's going to be very interesting. Here's another good question. Do you think Kyle Sloter will be traded this offseason?
Yeah, I think that once I don't know what the contract was that he signed, but I think that once his contract is officially terminated with the Stallions, I don't think that he's going to be back with the Stallions. Sloter will probably end up. He'll either end up in Mexico or overseas, I think.
Going back to the Breakers.
I don't know.
I don't
know if another USFL team's going to take him.
I think they would take him, but man, they like Akil Glass and Davis Cheek.
They love them both.
They like those guys.
They totally used them.
And well, would you use them? Come on now, dude came from Canada, and they liked Zach Smith too. Like, he was just kind of the odd man out, but they did like him. Like, I talked to a guy who's involved with the hub. It was a numbers game. They wanted the unknown, but something I want to bring up about Kyle Sloter though is I mean, it's kind of the world is at his feet right now, and we've seen some of those cryptic tweets from sorry, I'm thinking about clapping cheeks right now. Holy but the real, we've seen these cryptic, I'll just say cryptic cheeks from Jamar Smith about some of the stuff he's put out, right? So if I'm the USFL, I am hoping that, and I moved some money around, but I am hoping that if Alex Magoo leaves, he stays in the NFL, because there's $200,000 that you burn 60, burn 200K more. Let's get Alex Magoo to the XFL, because that dude is the way cooler version of Ben DiNucci. So I don't get rid of Sloter until, I'm going out there. It comes down to the money thing, and Luke Miller's been like, get this guy been exactly right. Get this guy some endorsements. Make this guy the mayor of Birmingham for a day. Give this guy money. The XFL wants to pay him $200,000. You pay him $201. I don't care. Keep this guy. If he doesn't stay on the 53 or the practice squad the whole year and doesn't get offered a futures contract, pay this guy. They did it in year one. They gave $100,000 to a couple of these quarterbacks. It's out there. But give this dude money if he does not come back, or if he has the option to come back.
I agree. No, I would do what you know how they in the CFO were talking about this yesterday in chat. Zach Calazeros, he makes like what, $300K a year. I mean, in my opinion, Magoo is better. Like, I know that might sound wild, but Magoo is better, and I would give him I don't know. I feel like a TF. I think if he does, like you said, if he doesn't stick on a 53, like all these leagues, he like you said, he could be a face of them. So go out, offer him the money he deserves. He doesn't deserve to be making anything less than $200,000. He doesn't. I mean, honestly.
Well, the market's going to dictate. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you just have to keep him there. I don't care if it's 100. If the XFL offers him 125, you offer him 126. Like you keep him there. Like it doesn't matter. He's a brand. I want to see him play in the NFL. I want to see him actually get in the game. But I also, and this isn't like, trying to football wars this. These guys can be pro USFL, pro XFL. But if any of these guys, and even this goes down the media, if they pay me $200K, guess what? I'm going to talk as much positive about one league, and I'm not going to care about the other league, or vice versa. Obviously the guy needs to do what's best for him. Football's a terrible sport for your body. It's a great sport for your eyes. Everything else is terrible, but he's still young enough. He gets on the field. Even if he doesn't do well in 2024, which I don't see him not doing well in 2024, no matter where he plays, get this guy to the point where he's making more money than he could on the other league. Keep him there. On that flip side, going back to Slaughter, you got to keep Kyle there. I know it's not sexy, Jalen Moore, but he does have more experience. He's got the preseason starts. He's got XFL starts, USFL starts. You keep him there because the only thing worse than a quarterback, your backup quarterback coming into a game, a backup quarterback that hasn't played.
One of the first things that I mentioned when I joined, Shady Sports was I want to see these guys, think about branding themselves and really trying to market themselves. I just feel like the XFL isn't. I mean, the USFL isn't on par with the XFL with helping these guys brand or build a brand of sorts, and it's not. Again, not a knock on the USFL. I think they're just more of an old school traditional style, and their one goal is to get them back to the NFL. But if I'm a guy like Alex Magoo, like you were just talking about, I'm gonna remember as a football fan Alex Magoo, the USFL MVP, not Alex Magoo, the emergency 3 for the Seattle Seahawks. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to go out there and you're going to take a guy like Alex Magoo, especially in the city of Birmingham, I'm sure Endzone can attest to this, and I know Pierce has already his thoughts on it. If I'm in Birmingham, I want this guy to be the face of this franchise for as long as possible. You know what I mean? Like, so go out there and do it. And the USFL should be trying to do that as much as possible. Like, you want to explore the NFL, sure. But let's get you, like, you were saying, Pat, let's get you some endorsements. Let's get you, a key to the city. Let's do something along those lines to try and keep certain players here to build a brand for themselves. Like, I'm pretty sure that that's what the XFL is doing with St. Louis and AJ McCarron. Like, I'm pretty sure that that's what they're doing. Like,
AJ McCarron can sell me, gas for $7, and people in Birmingham or people in Mobile are going to buy it. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like they were doing that last year with Boogie and whatnot when they had the United by Football, which love to see that come back. Because and Scooby writes his own thing. But they've done some stuff with like the breaking tea stuff and whatnot as well.
I'm not saying the USFL has it, Pat. I don't want to say that they have it. I just don't. I feel like the XFL focuses more on the technological side and the social media side of things more so than the USFL side does. I feel like the presence. But
you can make that argument you can make that argument from last year. The USFL did that with their. All they really did was in my opinion, like they endorsed, and someone wrote it, they endorsed Danucci with his stuff. There's a couple retweets here and there, but there was really no different than United by Football. We can argue about production and all that stuff, but United by Football and Player 54, when you take the bare bones of it, are the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, they did have some nice stuff with the showcases and whatnot, but that's how you build them. That's building brands for these guys and whatnot. It really comes down to the agents and whatnot. Now, there was community engagement that we saw in there, and there is community engagement in St. Louis and whatnot as well. Like, that's a real thing happening.
Oh yeah.
But like, I mean, in the end, like, if I want to build my brand, I'm going to do it myself. You know,
Oh yeah,
like,
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
you know, they tried to do it with Brady White, who I don't know if you know this, went to Memphis, by the way.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
I think it's also like easier said than done, like building a brand of a football player, especially in a spring football league where, you know, being realistic, most people view these leagues as minor league football and can't remember the names or just flat out don't care, you know? So it's not as easy as like, you know, down Tuscaloosa down the road, whichever starting quarterback starts at Alabama is going to be a millionaire the moment his name is mentioned. But like
even in St. Louis,
yeah, exactly.
We're air quote SEC country now. Okay.
Yes. Well, I think you brought up a great point earlier on. I'm excited to see, and Zach, you also touched up on this, kind of the philosophies of what's the marketplace going to look like in the future. Like, are we going to start seeing the XFL and the USFL have to fight for certain players? And what are their pitches going to be? Is this going to be like college football recruiting or off-season NFL, where is one league going to negatively recruit? Is money's obviously going to be a factor. You know, I know the USFL, I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but they might not pay the quarterbacks as much as the XFL, but maybe their base salary for the average player is a little bit more. Maybe there's some more incentive bonuses, things like that between the two leagues. I'm really interested to see the competition and the philosophies both leagues take to not only retain players, but add on players, because I think it's going to be a dogfight. Because the reality is like 16 spring football teams. I mean, there's a lot of talent to go around. Don't get me wrong, but between that, the CFL, and then all the indoor football leagues, like it's going to be hard to have the best product, you know.
And that's a fair point, and player pool is definitely going to be one of the biggest things that they are going to fight over. You know, I mean, it's obviously not going to be head to head. They only cross over for a few weeks, but it's definitely the player pool, and it's just going to be at the end of the day, whoever's willing to, you know, fork out for their top guys in comparison to the other leagues. That's all. You know, that's.
So I have a question for you. So like XFL or USFL comes up to you, you're a good player in their eyes for their league, say you're a quarterback. Do you go to the league that might pay you a couple $1,000s more, or do you go to the league that has a better track record of guys getting signed to an NFL team?
Well, I mean, I guess it would just depend on where you're at with your philosophy, with where you are in your headspace. Is the NFL really your ultimate goal? Because if that's the case, then I'm going to go with the league that has people that sign more. You know, if it's just about making money and about, you know, maybe trying to build something with one of these leagues to get a future success, I think that I would take a little bit more of the money and not worry so much about the NFL opportunity side of things. That's really ultimately where you are as the player by player you know, base. And most players want to get back to the NFL, but at the same time, I think most players still want to play. So it's like you're not able to do both of that, because everybody knows that you get to the NFL, but if you're 52, 53, it could be a moment where you wake up one day and you're coming in and getting cut and you're back to being a free agent again. So it's really a matter of which one is more important to you, whether it's playing time or, you know, I want to stick in the NFL or you know, make it back to the NFL and that be it. So that's ultimately where it is at the end of the day with that question. I think the difference is going to be, once both these leagues are established, which one is making money more and which one is paying players more to be able to say, you could take that NFL opportunity, but here's also the endorsement side of things. Because that's really where it's going to come from, is going to be those endorsements on the outside where they can make their money. So it's going to be which league is going to be more appealing for that in the long term, where you can make the most money, and it may not be necessarily coming out of the league's pocket. that's going to be ultimately the future for both these leagues in determining who keeps their top stars.
Well, I think location's big too. Like,
oh yeah, for sure, absolutely, yeah.
Does anyone remember a player named Tejan Korama? I think he was on Michigan in 2022, and then this year he was on Seattle. He owns a gym and a training facility in Arlington, right where they guess. So he was running his business, doing all that stuff. Makes a lot of sense for him to do that, you know. Like, this guy, you know, he's a strong dude, a little bit undersized as far as height wise, as a guard center. Yeah, man, let me go play football. Because this is the thing too, you're in this athletic space. Now you go from being, I played football at Texas State, to professional football player. Like, oh, I'm getting trained by a professional athlete now. You know what I mean? So you build we're talking about brands and whatnot. You know, if we talk about MBT with Atlanta being less than 2 hours from Birmingham, if either one of these teams goes to Atlanta, the legends come back, whether it's an XFL or USFL team, Atlanta is full of football players. How many of these Atlanta guys are going to try and go sign with the Atlanta team if they got stuff going on down there? You know, so I think location's a big thing with some of these guys who know who they are, know their role. Because I don't think if the XFL sends 50 players and the USFL sends 4, I don't think that matters as much as people think it does for the player, because if you're good, they're going to find you. If that league sends one guy to the NFL, that's a pipeline still. Might be a small pipeline, but if you're good, they will find you. Division III guys, they go to the league. NAIA guys, they go to the league. IFL, all the arena leagues, they go to the league. It happens. So I don't like, while that number is a good tweet and a good, like, you know, engagement post and whatnot, and, you know, gets a lot of people on Twitter riled up or riled down depending on which it tickles your fancy. In the end, I think location and real, like, knowing yourself as a man about what you want to do with life, I think that's going to factor in big for a couple of these 27, 28-year-olds. 22-year-olds are just going to do whatever they like. They're going to look at the dollars in front of them. Like, they're just going to, if some of these 22-year-olds from like an FCS or a low, you know, FBS school, man, wouldn't surprise me if some of these guys played 8 weeks in the XFL, did something stupid to get kicked off the team, and then put another 10 weeks on their resume and stacked it up and hope they get a training camp invite.
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of different ways you could approach this at this point. That's the thing about this that everybody's kind of underselling, in my personal opinion, is the fact that these players have more options than ever before. And with options comes leverage. So these players are really the ones who are winning because they have leverage over a USFL, over an XFL. Before, if you weren't in the NFL, pretty much you were going to the XFL or you were going to the next indoor football league. But now you have the XFL, the USFL, the CFL, the LFA, the ELF. You could go on for days with all the different options these players finally have. And it's amazing to see, but it's also a situation where I think you almost get overwhelmed by all the different options because there are just so many different ways that you can find talent at this point. But we got to kind of put a bow on this. It's getting kind of late on the eastern side of this country. So any final thoughts as we wrap this up? We'll go to End Zone first.
Yeah, I, like many of you, I'm just interested to see how this plays out, because I think that there are a lot of different approaches and a lot of different exciting things, like seeing how Daryl Johnston was shouting out his old AAF days. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. I was there in the press conference. He was talking about how he wants the USFL to be an official pipeline to the league. Like, if that happened, that's a game changer, but that seems like it could be far down the road. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the XFL does in year 2 business-wise. How are they going to manage that financially with Redbird Capital Partners? But yeah.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Have a great night, and we'll move on to Zach. Any final thoughts?
Honestly, I think the best way to kind of look at this, and this is kind of just a general end to just some of the talks online. Best way I'll put that without going farther, if you catch my drift. We have two great football leagues going on right now outdoors. We have all this arena indoor access right now. It's the golden age of football options that you can choose. I know that there are people that will pick whichever one they like, but honestly, whatever preference you have, just be appreciative you got these options to watch and view, because the dream of some folks that are these diehard fans like ourselves that, they want to watch something. They want to watch their favorite players that maybe didn't get to the NFL, or maybe they're these college guys that, were good, but not getting that chance to hit the field once more in professional pads and helmets and with professional spotlights and broadcasts on them. This is the best time right now. And we're seeing a completely new phase of football. I think part of that is thanks to the NFL's continued mega growth, that we're finally getting more of that underneath to stir up to where we can see so many more interested parties wanting to be involved. So, I mean, even the IFA, I'll bring that one up too. The most recent integration of another league, run by or at least Hal Mummy's kind of, I would say, bit that he's bringing into the football landscape. So my thing is just enjoy the ride. I think I don't say that enough to people is, enjoy the football ride you got and the football you have to go and watch is the best way I can put it. I don't knock it. Whatever football you like, that's great. I just hope that we get to watch some sort of that like this. Doesn't matter what or where for years to come. Simple thing is, in fact, is that matter. So it's a good time to be a football fan. It's a simple message.
100%. Pat, any final thoughts from you?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot of good stuff. It's always good to have multiple people here talking and sharing their thoughts and everything like that. And I mean, I will say that in the end, when people root against the other leagues, we're rooting against people's jobs and livelihoods, and it's not just a thing for the players to go to the NFL, but it's also for the coaches and the equipment guy and the referees and the broadcasters like ESPN and Fox. Sometimes they kind of put out their, I don't want to say B team, but some people we really don't really care to listen to, but now they're getting an opportunity to call a pro football game. And so, I mean, I think when you factor in the livelihoods of a lot of these people, you should, kind of remember that these are people out there doing their job, and they're doing the best they can, and it's a big thing. And like it not only it trickles down into like some of these media outlets as well, using less experienced guys and gals. And like, I mean, if the USFL or the XFL doesn't exist, we're out a couple $100 as far as like the amount of income we bring in. And I mean, especially coming from the YouTube side, like, I mean, I interviewed a guy like Clint Sig, Terry Myrick. Those are guys who are not in the NFL, right? Like, those, no one knows who they are if the USFL doesn't exist, Like, my channel doesn't get traction. And, like, all the guys, Zach, you've interviewed, you know what I mean? Like, some of these guys aren't going to the NFL, but because you have a platform and they use it or whatever, it's like now people can kind of care about some of these guys who they wouldn't. And maybe one of their stories goes like, Sam, you did that one on the guy Duran. It got almost like 2,000 views on YouTube. Help that watch time a little bit for you.
Definitely didn't hurt, that's for sure. Pierce, any final thoughts from you, man?
What I've been saying for a while now, kind of what Zach's saying. Just enjoy the ride. Football's football. It's all fun, and like, sure, the business models are different. Sure, some may be signed to the NFL more than others, and like, sure, some teams suck more than the other teams suck. But it's not just football in the end of the day. And I love how Pat brings up, all the jobs he brings up. Like, because of Sam, like, I was able to interview Mitch Kidd, and like, he's never going to the NFL. Like, I won't say never, but he's not looking to be in the NFL. But yet he's a hit in the FCF, and he's currently playing in the NAL right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the playoffs, I think, right?
He actually was knocked out with an injury a few weeks back, but really was sorry, NAL side of me getting best of me, but yes, he was making an impact.
Oh, I like the most animated we saw him all show talk all the
We love that stuff. But like, it brings opportunity for a lot of people, and I feel like people just kind of overthink that, or just attack certain people when they say something bad about another league. And yes, that's mostly on Twitter, but I feel like there's people, that do just talk about it. But it's just overall, you should just be happy for the people that are getting jobs and the players that are playing, getting, that opportunity, and just getting the opportunity of watching football after the NFL season's over. Like, it just bothers me when people, like, I can get it when some people do for fun. I just know a lot of people do it with, like, that intent of just, like, you're just saying this league's bad. Football is football. Just enjoy it. Love the players you want to love. Like, it's okay if, like, Kirby Wilson chose chicken salad over pizza in a weird sense. But, like, football is football. Just enjoy it. If you don't want to watch it, just turn it off. Watch something else.
Like most Stallions games?
Yeah, for sure. Like, oh, man, my team's getting slaughtered? I'll turn it off. All right.
Slaughtered. Oh.
Sorry,
fair.
I had to. You're a Breakers
That's
fan.
fair.
Sorry.
No, that's fair.
If there's a Showboats fan, I'd do the exact same thing. But just
we
like,
know your feelings on the Showboats.
Yeah. So we won't miss you if you turn off the USFL. We won't miss you if you turn off the XFL or both. We won't miss you. We'll still keep watching it because we love football. So that's just what it is in the end of the day.
100%. I love that sentiment. Michael, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I got a couple. First and foremost, the Bay Area Panthers are up 21-6 on the San Diego Strike Force. Playoff implications on the line there in the IFL. Speaking of the IFL to XFL Combine is happening, which is having a championship weekend. It's a wonderful thing for the IFL getting recognition, and it's wonderful for that partnership that was, released last year, or heading into this year, that they were going to be a working relationship. We're finally getting something along those lines. That's awesome. And then then at the end of the day, I think there's a way for both these leagues to succeed. Each one has a different business model, and I don't think one business model is better than the other. I think there's advantages and disadvantages to both, and I think that as long as they don't overcross, their schedules any more than what they are at this point in time, I think that they will both succeed perfectly fine and have no issues. I think the USFL needs to figure something out as far as their TV ratings are concerned. With the dip off that they saw, Daryl Johnston kind of seemed confused by why there was a dip. I think most of us understand why there was a dip. It's not really a bash on the USFL because at the end of the day, it is a good business model to not overspend, but they need to find a way to put butts in seats all the time if they want the appeal to come across on the TV, because a lot of people do watch the game for the atmosphere. And when you suck the atmosphere out, it doesn't matter how good the game is in front of you. A lot of people aren't going to remain interested. As for us, obviously we do, but not everybody is going to do that. So they have to figure that out and find the best way to attack that down the road, in my opinion. But other than that, it was great football all season long. This is the first year that I'm going to get football every weekend. My wife's not very happy about that, but I'm ecstatic. And just until next season, guys, just root for who you root for. Cut the tribalism out, like Mike said earlier, and just enjoy the football. If you enjoy one over the other, cool. You don't need to go on everybody's post and tear somebody apart if they say something good about the other league. So that's it. I'm going to send a message of positivity and love to end this out. So
Hey, that's the best way to go. As you guys all know, if you're watching here, we cover all forms of football. It doesn't matter arena, indoor, outdoor, it doesn't matter what country. Quite honestly, football is football to us. I mean, half the time I have to watch it on mute because of my wife anyway. So it doesn't matter what language it's in. So with all that being said, I really appreciate everybody's time. You guys greatly appreciate every one of you guys coming on here. It's been fun chatting with you guys. Definitely look forward to the future when we can collab more on some more XFL, USFL content, and maybe even some indoor stuff. Zach's been on the channel for some indoor stuff in the past, and probably will be on some more in the future. But with all that being said, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the like button wherever you're watching, Facebook, Twitter, no matter where. Share it out, tell your friends. And thank you for everything. Make sure you follow all of these guys that are on here. They're great, great analysts of the game and definitely worth all the time invested in watching all their content.
Summer Showcase, baby.
That's right. Summer Showcase this Thursday at 8:30 p.m. With that, have a good night.
I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer.